knowing how columnists like to wallow in words, I think you'll all be relieved to know that the policy forum is very strict. I have exactly 5 minutes. So before I exhaust those 5 minutes talking about something very close to my heart, and that is journalism and how it affects public interest, I would just like to take a minute to thank first the Solomon family for this award, the selection committee, and the Public Policy Forum. This is an award that is coveted by journalists for the connection it makes between our craft and public policy. I'm delighted to accept it and extremely grateful. Without allowing this to slip into some sort of a parody of the Academy Awards, I'd also like to take a minute to thank my wife, Joan. Like so many vocations of people in this room, journalism doesn't care much about families and the watershed events that are so important to them. A career in journalism, like a career in politics or medicine or any number of other things, is simply impossible without the patience and encouragement and understanding of someone who cares as much about what you're doing as you do. So I would just like to thank her again. And finally, somewhat strangely perhaps, I'd also like to tip my boulder to Conrad Black. If he hadn't swerved the Ottawa Citizen from the center lane, the libertarian lane, I must say it was a swerve over my dead body, I wouldn't be here tonight resurrected as a writer. Unlike many of the long list of distinguished previous winners of this award, I never worked with Hy Solomon. The closest I came was sharing elevators and distant office space with him in Ottawa in the early 80s. Nevertheless, he was both a model and an icon. Those things that are synonymous with journalism at its best, fairness, curiosity, and a deep desire to advance public debate, are also synonymous with Hy and his work. As you know, journalism is not always practiced in the Solomon tradition. Fox Television recently asked me to explain Canada's position on the Iraq War and provide a national perspective on tensions with the United States. The interview never aired. In discussing the interview and what I would say on air, I told a very surprised producer just what Canada had done for the U.S. since September the 11th. How homes had been opened to stranded travelers, how Canadians fought and died in Afghanistan in the War on Terror, how Canadians are guarding U.S. ships in the Gulf today, and the general affection that Canadians have for Americans, if not always their government's policies. The producer then made an executive decision. I was far too moderate. They would use Jack Layton instead. Journalism that chooses to inflame rather than inform is more than destructive. It misses the point. Thoughtful public policy discussion is not just for wonks. How we think and talk about issues shapes more than what we decide or how we act. It determines who we are. Fox is far from alone in figuring that the safest route to a solid bottom line detours through controversy, not through complexity. The threat of tabloid television and pressure to dumb down the news are just as real in Canada as they are in the United States. In this country, a unique level of media concentration is the unintended consequence of tax law protecting newspapers from foreign ownership. The implications of that concentration are profound. At a time when there's so much to discuss domestically, so much to understand internationally, fewer voices and even fewer points of view are being heard in some of the country's largest newspaper markets. That may be in the short-term interests of shareholders. It is not in the long-term interest of a vibrant, deliberative democracy. With the exception of the Star and Globe, much of the Canadian newspaper audience gets its Middle East news from a converged media conglomerate that no longer operates a permanent bureau in the region, or for that matter, in many places around the world. The result is that issues critical to Canadians often arrive by stealth, and that choices as difficult as war or peace are being made on the strength of narrow, sometimes superficial coverage. And as we all know, difficult choices are not limited to the Iraq War. No one in this room needs to be reminded that Ottawa's critical relationship with the United States is being redefined, that the ongoing and emerging realities of a unipolar world will change national priorities, or that bold new strategies will be needed to secure Canada's success in a global knowledge-based economy. There is an historic place in that decision-making process for media, but the future of that role depends on a commitment to excellence. I'm happy to report that my own paper is responding to that challenge. It allows columnists like me the unfettered freedom to pursue important issues and the ideas that we believe are important. Along with its century-old commitment to this city, it continues to fund foreign and national bureaus. Perhaps most significantly, it is investing heavily in young journalists through an intern program that is the industry standard. There are costs attached to those things, but they are modest compared to the cost of failing to deliver the depth of information readers require and democracies demand. Meeting that demand is not an option. For journalists, it is a personal privilege. For media companies, it is a public responsibility. Thank you very much.